Hey, everybody, this is Captain Kyle. I am here with Mark Jackson, who you might know from the Orville, though he looks a little different than he does in most of his episodes. And also Dan Deevy, who is one of the showrunners of the Galactic Diversity and Inclusion Convention, which will be happening May 5th through the 7th, which Mark will be attending. And Dan is also with the Gays in Space organization. I have to say it properly. And we're here to talk to them both just about the con, and also I'm going to grill Mark on, everything Orville. Well, not everything Orville, but. So how are you guys doing today?
Doing good, thank you. Great to be on here. Great to be talking the Orville. Keeping that show alive is a wonderful thing for me. So thank you.
From your lips to God's ears.
Come on, hashtag renew the Orville season 4, people. We were just saying that, the Orville got a shout out from NASA the other day. So It's kind of like, how many more signs does Disney Plus or Hulu need to realize, I guess people like this show? Maybe it's a good investment to do it, but yeah.
They may just need, intelligent life from another universe to actually get in touch and say, can you please renew it? Because it has, intergalactic appeal and you're really not serving the galaxy well by not renewing it. So, yeah, I think that might be it. That might be that tiny thing that is all it takes to push them over the edge.
Or we need Grogu to use the Jedi mind trick on the executives. And because I'm sure Grogu watches it.
I have a little Grogu in my living room, just sitting there. He's very cute.
And he watches you.
He does watch us, yes. He's learning. He's always learning, Grogu, isn't he? He's always learning. You
have a Grogu, which I always like to ask people in sci-fi shows before the Orville, were you a science fiction fan? And if so, what were your favorites?
Yeah, I was a big science fiction fan. I still am. Star Trek, Star Wars, all the classics. And I'm I'm a big fan of sort of more niche, how would you say it, sort of independent science fiction as well. Ex Machina was fantastic. I love Danny Boyle's Sunshine. All these beautiful science fiction projects that really make you think. And I read a lot. I still do read a lot of sci-fi. The Ian M. Banks universe is one of the greatest, I think. Yeah, I'm quite a big geek for sci-fi. So when I got the job in the Orville, it was a bit of a dream come true, really. And to walk around that ship that you're on right now for the first time was just spellbinding. It was very magical. Yeah, I felt like a big kid, and still do when I get to do anything Orville. So very lucky man.
We could be best friends. Okay, this is awesome.
Yes, by all means.
Now, obviously, we love Isaac, but was it a challenge as an actor to damp down your instincts to respond emotionally to your fellow actors?
Well, I think it's all in the script, so that is a big help. Apart from one specific scene in season 3, where Isaac does get an emotion chip, his dialogue is pretty cold. It makes it very hard to learn, actually, because actors, they rely on the script so much in the sense that you have something like emotional memory when you're learning lines. It's so much easier to learn a line when there's an emotion attached to it, which makes Isaac's lines very hard to learn. But so it's a very different process learning Isaac's lines. It's very much a sort of just shove it in there, keep repeating it. And of course, a lot of it is scientific jargon, which is just cruel, really, because I have to do it on set, whether I'm wearing that helmet or not. And, I guess it's just part of the job. So there's that. And I think there's different challenges with delivering Isaac's lines when I'm in the suit and when I'm not. When I'm in the suit, obviously my face can't betray me, which is handy. But then, as I've said before, I sort of came to realize that when I'm wearing the suit, I'm puppeteering effectively. rather than acting in the conventional sense. So it became very much about expressing himself through the minutiae of movement, or the way that he held himself, and the places that he chooses to place his concentration, to focus on, and be very specific about that. So that was quite interesting, choreographing myself in that way. Obviously, when I'm playing human Isaac, the great challenge there is to keep the emotion out of the face, unless he's got an emotional chip in him, and then he can't contain himself, which was very fun to play. So yeah, it is a bit of a challenge. And of course, everybody wants to make you laugh, or everybody wants to make you crack, because actors are assholes. Who knew it? And there was a particular scene when I was arm wrestling with a biker in season 3, which
was a great scene.
It's a great scene. He was brilliant. I mean, he was the biggest puppy you've ever met, but obviously he was playing this badass. But he just tried to make me laugh as much as possible. It was like trying to deliver a Hamlet soliloquy in the face of Brian Blessed, giving everything that he's got. And it was tough, but we got through it. And it was very enjoyable. I had a very good time. So yeah, I suppose that would sum up the challenges of playing a being that doesn't have emotions.
You met the challenge, which we're very glad, and I imagine sometimes I did make you laugh. However, as such a logical being, have you found that you kind of get into Isaac mode and has that logically interacting with people on the show affected your interactions with people in real life sometimes?
God, I wish I could say that it had. I wish I could say that Isaac has made me a more logical, rational, cool-headed person. But you can just ask my husband, who I'm sure will disagree with all of those things. I think, I really admire Isaac because he's very fair, which I think humans often find it quite hard to be, myself included. So sometimes I do think, how would Isaac respond in this situation? And I think fairness is a big part of his modus operandi, isn't it? Like he really wants to make sure that he gets it right, and that everything is balanced. Balance is very important for him, I think. Efficiency of operation, making sure that his circuits and his commands are executed excellently. So yeah, we can all learn something from Isaac, I suppose. But he's very loyal, Isaac, as well. He's if he sets his mind to something, and if he decides he's in admiration of a particular person or project, then he's very loyal to it. He will stick to it, stick by it, and do his best to make sure that it succeeds.
Well, I do notice that Isaac has made a lot of logical decisions to help his crewmates in a number of ways, and even the crewmates' kids. Would you say that the message is that it's more logical to be kind and helpful than cruel and selfish?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to always be far more productive. Yes, if Isaac can give us that, then I think the world would be a lot better place. Kind and helpful. Helpful, I suppose, relates to efficiency, so that's a no-brainer for him. Kind is a bit tricky. I suppose kind to him would be more fair in that respect. I think we can go back to the fairness aspect. It's always very easy to make the mistake of attributing human emotions to anything that Isaac says or does. And you always have to pare it back and go, well, actually, why is he doing this? And why is he saying that? And it's never, ever to do with wanting to make someone feel a certain way. And it's certainly not to do with him feeling a certain way.
Right. Unless he has an emotion chip, and then, all bets are off the table.
Yes, unless there's an emotion chip. And then all of this conversation is meaningless. But that was a little blip in the ocean of his lack of emotion.
Now, you were also as Isaac, well nigh indestructible, except for like that one time, but we won't talk about that. How did it feel to be like the super strong, indestructible character on the show?
It's great to be that guy, and he often saves the crew's arse, doesn't he? I mean, like collective arses. The collective arse of the crew is what I'm trying to say. He does it with either his intelligence or his strength, and that's a great thing to have. And often he is recognized for that. Practically on set, that suit looks strong, but it's constantly falling apart. Lights are sort of pinging off it across the room. Whole sections of it will just, slide down me. So in reality, you don't feel desperately strong when you're wearing it. It certainly looks good. I will give it that. But yeah, you do find that I find, and in fact, the team who are there to like make sure Isaac's costume works will tell you the hours of frustration that they have had trying to make it look like the superhero stuff that it is. So yeah, it's a dichotomy, I suppose. There, I playing the character makes me feel strong, but actually wearing that suit isn't always the most robust experience that you think it might be.
How comfortable is that suit? Are you like broiling inside of it a lot, or?
Well, the suit has had many different variations. And just when, I get it really comfortable with lots of negotiation with the designers, they then give the whole thing an upgrade and we're back to square one. But, relatively comfortable, I'd say. I mean, it's been beautifully designed to fit me perfectly. I think a lot of money was spent on it. I daren't ask how much. I know the helmets themselves are very expensive. And yeah, I mean, it's as comfortable as it could be. It's not hot unless, you're filming outside in the Californian sunshine, which we have done. And that is pretty tough. But then, if you're out there with Bortus or Clyden, you can't really complain because they are slick with sweat underneath those costumes. But in the studio, it's freezing. It's absolutely freezing in those things. I mean, the crew will walk around in coats and gloves and scarves because the heat from the lights would overpower everyone if the AC wasn't whacked up. So actually, I'm pretty temperate in that thing. So it's quite handy.
How many times, though, I got to ask a question, Mark, how many times have you gone through the process of them putting it on you, making it perfect, and then realizing, crap, I should have peed first? Damn it.
Well, I can pee when I'm wearing it.
Oh.
So during the design stage, I was like, I need a pee when I'm wearing those things. So that was factored in quite early on. The biggest incumbent to peeing is gloves. The gloves are put on with KY jelly. That's how we get them on and off, which is the Orville's dirtiest secret. And they make an extraordinary noise when you slide them on. A wet sort of flatulent noise. But I just whip the gloves off. They come off pretty easily, as you can imagine, with the KY. And then I'm good to go.
I am loving this answer more and more as you go. Fantastic.
And thank you for bringing up the urination. Very nice, Dan.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. What's next?
So I do have to say, when Orville was first marketed way back, it gave the impression it was going to be like Galaxy Quest, the series, it was going to be basically comedy in space. But it's actually, I think Seth kind of pulled the wool over Fox exec's eyes to make it a much more serious thing. Do you sometimes wish, though, it had gone with more of a lighter tone? Because it's gotten quite dark in some episodes, or do you like the balance that it has with, more organic humor and the serious stories?
Yeah, I think the show now is exactly how Seth always wanted it to be. And, it's sort of grown into season 3, and it's grown into the show that it really should be. I think in its more serious tones, it is a much more. It's much more of a love letter to Star Trek than it is if it's too light. And I think the lightness is still there. I mean, even at the end of, right when you think at the end of season 3 there's going to be another Kaylon invasion because they all turn up, they're just there as wedding guests. The entire bloody civilization. So that wouldn't happen in Star Trek. It's definitely still the Orville. It's definitely still got that light tone, and the genius of Seth is inserting it just when you wouldn't expect it, to give you that distinct Orville flavor. So I think it's probably reached the perfect balance now. And if you have serious episodes, you earn the comedy afterwards, and vice versa. You can't have one without the other. And I find, as much as I love science fiction, I find some of it to be too dystopic. Is that the word?
Dystopian.
Thank you. I find it too dystopian, and it's too it's unrealistic, isn't it? Really, human beings need to laugh. Human beings need to make a joke out of things, particularly when it gets really bad, because it's our way of releasing the pressure. I love dark sci-fi just as much as I love light sci-fi, but sometimes they just take themselves a little too seriously. And I think the Orville knows when it needs to take itself seriously, and it knows when it can have a laugh. I think Seth done really well to strike the balance. And I think this is a good place to be. And I think it showed that with the fan reaction to season 3, that, it was sort of like a coming of age almost for the show. And I think the Orvillians out there appreciated that.
Absolutely.
You can tell he did.
Though the Orville paints a society on Earth that is far from dystopian, it's definitely a very utopian society. But today we have a very divisive climate, politically and socially, and it almost seems like that future is further away. But do you think that future is still possible? Now I'm getting into the deep questions.
Well, we've got 400 years to get there, so who knows what will happen. I mean, maybe it'll get much worse before it gets better, but as long as it gets better, we're okay, right? I don't know. I'm just a mortal living in the 21st century. What the hell? What are we in? 21st century. Just like you, I have time travel for this Zoom.
Time travel makes it confusing.
Oh my God. I told you that it was the end of the day in London here, so I'm kind of, I don't know. That is a big question, isn't it? I think the great Seth always set out to make a hopeful show, and he does do that. And it does contrast all the other stuff that's out there at the moment, which is really wonderful. And it's not just in the vision of what Earth is sort of like, but it's in the vision of how hopeful, the hurdles that people encounter on the ship and with different races, how, hopeful we can be in resolving those problems and those challenges. It's just, I think that's addictive. I think humans are addicted to that kind of stuff. We like to see things working, and we like to feel like we live in a world that does have hope and can be improved and can bring joy to everyone, So I think he's really nailed it there, and long may he continue doing it.
We would love to see Orville season 10 at some point.
Wow. That'll be 2040, I suspect.
Yeah, the way it's been going, but
might be a bit early actually. 2040. I mean,
now you're attending Galactic Diversity Inclusion Con, which I think is, the con itself is a step towards that utopian future. What are your thoughts on how this con can actually assist people in realizing that just because people are different, they are still at heart people? Like I said, deep questions.
Well, D&I Con, Diversity and Inclusion Con, is coming up, and I just think it's such a special event because all conventions, a lot of conventions before have definitely included aspects of diversity and inclusion. So it's good to recognize that, I think. But to have a convention that is solely focused on diversity and inclusion is so special. And it kind of brings it to the forefront without any shame, without any embarrassment, and says, this is important. And we recognize that it's important to all of you who are going to attend. And it's such an honor to be part of it, along with some fantastic actors and, people from our industry, because diversity and inclusion is so important to our industry as well. To be able to share that with everyone who's going to come along within the framework of science fiction is very exciting. I think, God, when I was growing up, diversity and inclusion, they were sort of buzzwords that were kind of embarrassing to lend your admiration to, which is just so absurd. And what I love about particularly the young people today is that they aren't ashamed to identify as people who support diversity, support inclusion, support variety, and are happy to stand up and say, I want to hear your story and I want to hear what you have to say, even though you're in the minority and even though it's not kind of cool to listen to what you have to say. I just think it's very special. I think there's a whole movement, there's a tide flowing towards diversity and inclusion in a great way. And this con, the first of its kind, is going to be such a huge player in that respect.
Well, that is awesome.
I love hearing Mark talk about the convention. And I love hearing him describe it. And because, Mark has been, since the first time we met, Mark immediately became family. And we've worked together a bunch of times now. And we couldn't do D&I Con if Mark couldn't come. We would have changed the date.
I'm sure you'd have survived, but I would have been very upset. Yeah.
And, just real quick, I wanted to say that, talking about back in the day, diversity and inclusion, not something that people were very interested in exploring what somebody else is like or their life experience is like. That's one of the things that Seth did in season 3 with the Topa storyline for a cisgendered heterosexual white male to truly sit down and try to understand the experience that trans people go through in their lives, to truly sit down and not only try to understand it, but understand it and examine it from all different perspectives, from the perspective of, the protective aunt who doesn't want to overstep, to the protective robot who, I swear, man, you say no emotion, but when you stepped to protect her from Clyden in sickbay, dude, that one move said so much and had so much feeling and power behind it that's a moment that is really, really ingrained in my head. I think is one of Isaac's best moments. It was very touching. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I've got to be careful about saying Isaac's got emotions. You guys can say it as much as you like. I'm cool with it. But no, I think you're right. And I think Seth did do that with that storyline. And isn't that just the first step about towards diversity inclusion? Isn't it that just taking a moment to try and understand someone else's perspective? And I just think if we can all do that just for a moment, the world would be a better place. And I think diversity and inclusion, this D&I Con, is going to be such a huge part of that. Just bringing it straight to the center and forefront of conversation, and saying it's cool to be diverse
and include it and to include people. It's cool to do that, right? It's more than cool. It's essential, guys. It's essential. Yeah,
very much so. I do have to say, Chad did a great job in making everyone hate him. But to back away from the deep, dark questions, I do see that you finished a sci-fi drama called Forever Now.
Yes.
What are you allowed to say about the project and your role in it?
I'd say it's sci-fi light for a start. It is set in the modern day. I play a scientist who develops an anti-aging cure. And I start the film very old, played by Julian Glover, which was a great privilege. And then I become me because I take my own potion. And it's a very interesting film because it sort of it investigates what would we do if we had this power of kind of eternal youth, and sort of what implications would that actually have on the way that we go about our lives and the relationships that we have. And just because you're able to turn your body back, you can't necessarily turn the clock back on many aspects of your life. So it's a very beautiful film. I've seen a screening of it, and there's some fantastic performances in it. And it's completely different to the Orville, so it was great to film it. Really, really interesting and fun to do when I got back to the UK. I'm not sure about when it's going to be released, but I believe they're looking into a distribution and festival sort of format now.
Clearly, you took the potion home with you, Mark. Clearly, we get that. You took the potion home.
Well, there's just great lighting, and I've actually dialed up the filter aspect. You know what? I dialed it down because it was making me look ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever tried doing that, but it's not good. No, don't lie about what we look like, guys. Come on, let's keep it real.
I was going to say you enjoy diversity in your roles too, because playing different parts is always a fun thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like I've always said it's like ice cream acting. If you have one flavor of ice cream, you stop tasting it, right? So you've got to dive in between different flavors in your little cup. And you're like, oh, strawberry. Okay, now I can't taste strawberry. Go to some chocolate, you go back to strawberry, and there it all is in full Technicolor. So you've got to mix it up. If you're lucky. I mean, God, getting work is tough for everybody, including actors. So yeah, take it where it comes, is what I say.
That being said, are there any other projects you're working on now that you can discuss?
No. I'm doing some writing at the moment, which is great. Not sci-fi. But I'm really enjoying that, working with my writing partner. And yeah, I've got some ideas for things. So I'm kind of seeing how this year shapes up, really.
Well, we look forward to whatever you put out, writing or, roles in, Orville season 4, 5, 6, 7, and et cetera. And of course, we're looking forward to this, the Forever Now. That would be it sounds intriguing because I'm getting older and I would like to take some of that potion. If you have any extra, please send it along or bring it to the con and
right. Some. Okay. Yeah. That would be a hell of a party, wouldn't it?
I just don't give me too much. I don't want to be walking around like 8 years old. And
that would be, inconvenient to say the least. You'd probably get kicked out without a chaperone.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but before we go, any words for your fans out there?
Hey guys, it's been a while since we've had Orville on the telly now. But you're as dear to us in the cast as you have ever been. We love you guys. You have great taste, and your passion for sci-fi and for the stories that we are telling in the Orville is just constantly a beautiful thing to see. So please stick with us because it's not over yet.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Those from your lips again to God's ears. Dan, thanks for joining us. And definitely head over to the Galactic Diversity and Inclusion Con in Philadelphia, May 5th through the 7th. It's going to be a great time. Mark's going to be there. A lot of other wonderful actors are going to be there from Orville and Star Trek, and who knows what else Dan has up his sleeve. So thanks you guys for joining me, and thanks everyone out there for watching. As always, have fun and follow your fandom.
This is Captain Zap Brannigan. I prefer to call myself Admiral Zap Brannigan. I'd like to draw your attention to that sexy subscribe button, those curves, that triangle, like Leela's eye. Click it. Ah, that was great. Follow fun and have fandom and yabo.